Hello and welcome to the Science of Sleep, where we curl up beside curiosity and let science unfold like a warm blanket, soft, slow, and strange. Tonight, you don't have to do anything, just lie back. You don't need to remember, you don't need to understand. You're here, and that's enough. Let your body sink. Let the world go quiet. Even the molecules in your blood seem to hum a little softer now. Imagine this, a river flowing through you. But it's not made of water, it's made of messages. Silent ones. They glide through your brain and belly, weaving threads between your heart and your mind. Among them is one particular molecule, small, invisible, and endlessly misunderstood: serotonin. Not exactly a star, more like a stagehand. And yet, somehow, the entire emotional play seems to fold itself around this tiny thing. You've heard its name whispered on late-night health podcasts and shouted from cereal boxes that claim to boost mood. But serotonin doesn't shout. It doesn't crash into your consciousness like dopamine does. It slips in, slow and sly, like mist under a door. Tonight, we follow it, you and this river of hush, and we begin not in the brain, but somewhere more unexpected. Before that, if you find this moment calming, or if you just need a gentle voice in the dark, consider subscribing or share it with someone who needs a lullaby made of neurons. So, the river. The reason you woke up feeling okay. The reason a compliment made your chest warm. The reason silence can feel comforting or sometimes unbearable. There's something strange about serotonin. It seems to carry tone, not thoughts, not feelings. Tone, the background music of your entire internal experience, not the melody, just the key it's played in. Let's say you're walking down a hallway. Same hallway, 2 different mornings. One day, it's filled with golden light, and your shoulders feel light too. The next, it's just walls. Too narrow, too grey. What changed? Not the hallway. Maybe the serotonin? Of course, there's no single switch. You're made of a billion feedback loops, circuits, guesses, and corrections. But serotonin plays a part. And unlike dopamine, the applause junkie serotonin wants stability. It wants to keep you in the zone where life feels manageable. Not thrilling, not despairing, just quietly okay. It's funny. We always chase happiness like a goal. But serotonin doesn't care if you're happy. It cares if you're safe enough to notice you're happy. And right now, lying here, your body is listening. The warmth of your pillow, the hum of your room, the way your breath stretches your ribs without you doing anything. All that feedback, your body receives it, and serotonin interprets it. Like an old radio host, it tunes the dials in your brain. Not too fast, not too slow, just calm. But it wasn't always called serotonin. In 1935, scientists isolated a mysterious substance in blood serum that made blood vessels contract. They didn't know what it did in the brain, just that it seemed to control tone in the body. So they named it serotonin, serum plus tone. They had no idea how poetic that would turn out to be. Tone. You don't always notice it until it shifts. That invisible lean toward optimism, or that subtle drag of dread that colors an entire day. Serotonin doesn't generate the emotion, it prepares you for it. You can picture it as a soft gradient on the wall behind your thoughts. If dopamine is the tweet, serotonin is the background lighting, a low hum behind every decision. Now imagine what it's like when that hum disappears. No contrast, no glow, just grey, not sadness, not even pain, just the absence of emotional texture. That's what people often describe when serotonin falters. Not the presence of misery, but the vacuum of tone. That's why serotonin is so central to our sense of being alive. Not because it gives us joy, but because it allows joy to land. You might think of it as the emotional floorboards. Without them, you fall through your own experience. And tonight, as you drift, your brain is still balancing it. Tiny synapses recycling, adjusting, waiting for the next signal. You may be asleep, but your chemistry continues its lullaby. Oh, and here's something delightful. The same serotonin that helps you feel peace? It's the same chemical that helps sea slugs defend themselves. that helps octopuses feel calm enough to touch a mirror, that helps fruit flies decide whether they're socially dominant. That helps lobsters, yes. Lobsters choose whether to fight or flee. That chemical connects you to them. One thread, tangled through evolution, still humming its old tune. So as you breathe now, maybe you feel a little of that. A sense that you're part of something ancient, soft and unseen. Your body, still here, still adjusting its tone, preparing the theater of your dreams. And you? You don't have to do anything. Serotonin's already on stage. Serotonin wears many masks. It's not just one role, one place, one function. It's not simply the happy chemical, a label that's stuck like a half-remembered rumor. It is both more mysterious and more ordinary than that. More like a backstage actor who occasionally wanders into the spotlight, then disappears again into the machinery of your biology. You might expect something as emotionally important as serotonin to reside only in your brain, but your brain, fascinating as it is, doesn't have exclusive custody of this molecule. In fact, about 90 to 95% of your serotonin isn't in your head at all. It's in your gut, your intestines, your second brain, some scientists say, which is either humbling or hilarious, depending on your mood. So the next time your stomach flips before an exam, or clenches during bad news, or settles gently after a warm bowl of soup, remember, that's serotonin at work. Not causing the feeling, but responding to it, amplifying it, rebalancing it. Let's follow its trail. Inside your intestines, there's a kind of endless hallway lined with tiny sensor cells called enterochromaffin cells, if you're trying to win a trivia night. These little chemists produce the vast majority of your body's serotonin, not to flood your bloodstream with joy, but to help regulate motility. Yes, motility as in how things move through your digestive tract. If serotonin production is too low, your digestion slows, too high, and, well, let's just say you'll become urgently aware of your colon's existence. Either way, it's not about feelings. It's about function. It's about keeping things moving smoothly, rhythmically, silently. But here's where it gets trickier. Serotonin in the gut can't cross into the brain. The blood-brain barrier blocks it. They are, chemically speaking, two separate worlds. Like pen pals who can't visit each other, but still influence one another by what they write. How? Through your vagus nerve, a long, winding, two-way communication line that runs from your brainstem to your belly. It carries whispers in both directions, gut to brain, brain to gut. And serotonin? It's one of the main languages in that conversation. This is why the state of your gut microbiome, yes, all those little creatures you've been housing rent-free, can affect your mood, because they help shape how much serotonin your gut cells produce, which then nudges your nervous system, which nudges your brain, like a series of gentle dominoes falling in the dark. So, when people talk about trusting your gut, they're not just being poetic. You really do have a feedback system where emotions and digestion are co-authors. It's not just in your head because your head is listening to your stomach. You might feel this most during stress. Ever noticed how a single moment of emotional panic, like reading a text that starts with, "We need to talk," can ripple through your belly like a rolling storm? Serotonin is one of the messengers in that ripple. Not the loudest, maybe, but steady. Or think of grief. Not the sharp kind, but the kind that lingers in the body. The kind that turns meals tasteless and sleep sour. Serotonin levels often drop during prolonged sadness, and the body responds not just in the brain, but in the belly, sluggish digestion, nausea, a sense that your whole torso feels off, and you can't explain why. That's serotonin wearing a second face. Then there's its third. Platelets, the little blood fragments that help your body clot, also store serotonin. Why? Because when you're wounded, your body doesn't just want to stop bleeding. It wants to constrict blood vessels, reduce inflammation, prevent infection, and yes, maybe even help regulate the emotional trauma of being injured. Some scientists believe serotonin plays a subtle role here, too, in the emotional aftermath of pain. So by the time you've stubbed your toe, clutched your stomach, or felt the wind knocked out of your chest by a breakup, you've engaged serotonin in at least 3 domains: brain, belly, and bloodstream, all working together in a strange, invisible harmony. And yet we often reduce it to a smiley face emoji. It's almost insulting, isn't it? Serotonin doesn't want to make you happy. It wants to help you stabilize, to navigate, to return to baseline. It's the rail beneath the train, not the scenery flying by. Still, the myth persists. The happy chemical sells better. But imagine if we called it what it really is: the stabilizer, or the confidence regulator, or better yet, the emotional tone engineer. Something that says, I don't create your feelings, I help you hold them. Doesn't roll off the tongue, I know. But maybe next time you hear someone say, I just need more serotonin, you'll smile a little. Because serotonin isn't a cup you can just refill. It's a whole operating system. And tonight, as you drift, that system continues to hum beneath your dreams. Your gut and your brain are still holding quiet conversation. Your blood is still flowing with microscopic messengers, none of whom need your permission to do their jobs. And you? You are being carried, even now, by a molecule with many faces and no need for applause. Picture the dark, not the kind behind your eyelids, but deeper, the inside of your body, where no sunlight ever touches, a shadowed cathedral of tissues and fluids and secrets. And somewhere in that cathedral, near the center of your belly, serotonin is being born. It happens without announcement. No trumpets, no sparkles, just a quiet metabolic dance. A single amino acid, tryptophan, begins the transformation. You might remember tryptophan from your favorite bedtime turkey myth, but it's far more than a holiday nap excuse. It's the raw material serotonin's earliest ancestor. Once tryptophan enters your body, enzymes begin sculpting it. Like stone carvers, they chip away, modify, adjust. Eventually it becomes 5-hydroxytryptophan, or 5-HTP if you're whispering late-night supplement names to yourself. And then, through one final step, 5-HTP is converted into serotonin 5-hydroxytryptamine. There it is, born not in your mind, but in your gut. But if most of it is made down there, how do we feel it up here? Well, we don't, at least not directly. The serotonin in your intestines helps regulate digestion. The serotonin in your blood helps with clotting. But the serotonin in your brain, that delicate subset, is made locally. Your neurons can't import serotonin from the outside. They have to make it from scratch, using the same tryptophan, smuggled in through the blood-brain barrier like a suitcase of hope. Inside your brain, the Raphe nuclei, a cluster of small but mighty cells in the brainstem, act as serotonin's central command. Like a lighthouse, they send out long-reaching beams of serotonin to many other parts of your brain: the limbic system, the cortex, the hippocampus. Everywhere that thinks, remembers, decides, feels. Serotonin doesn't stay in one place. It wanders. It migrates along axons, floats across synapses, and lands in receptor sites designed like tiny keyholes, waiting for its specific shape. And here's where it gets surreal. There are at least 14 known types of serotonin receptors. 14, like different kinds of locks for the same key. Depending on which one it binds to, serotonin can excite or inhibit, soothe or awaken, slow down or speed up. It's not just on or off. It's jazz, improvised, conditional, local. In one part of your brain, serotonin might ease anxiety. In another, it might dampen sexual desire. In another, it could help you wake up. In another still, it might keep you from impulsively blurting out that thought you'll regret later. It doesn't dictate. It negotiates. That's what makes serotonin feel so elusive. It doesn't deliver messages so much as frame them. It creates the texture of experience without necessarily being the headline. Let's use an image. Imagine your consciousness is a pool of water. Thoughts are pebbles dropping in. Emotions are the ripples. Now, serotonin? Serotonin controls the viscosity of the water. When it's balanced, ripples fade gently. When it's off, those ripples either vanish too fast or echo too long. You don't notice serotonin directly. You notice how it feels to have thoughts. This subtle shaping is what makes serotonin essential to mood, even though it isn't a mood itself. But what if that shaping stops? Sometimes the neurons that make serotonin get damaged. Sometimes the receptors become insensitive. Sometimes stress or trauma suppresses production. And when that happens, it's like the pool of your mind becomes still, but not the peaceful kind. The kind where ripples won't form, emotions lose their tone, thoughts feel flat. The world looks washed out, like a dream where the colors are missing. And sleep? Sleep is one of serotonin's hidden masterpieces. Your body can't make melatonin, the sleep hormone, without serotonin. When darkness falls, the pineal gland, a tiny pinecone-shaped gland in your brain, begins transforming serotonin into melatonin. It's a chemical ritual that prepares your brain for night, quieting the circuits, lowering the core temperature, softening your edges. If serotonin is off balance, this process stumbles. You might feel alert when you should feel tired, or drowsy at noon, or like your dreams are blurry, half-cooked things you can't remember. This is why disorders like depression often come with sleep disturbances. The same molecule that shapes your emotions also shapes your circadian rhythms. It's all one web. Even dreams may be guided by serotonin's hand. Not the content perhaps, but the feeling of dreaming. That strange, floaty sense that something is real even though it's not. Serotonin modulates that boundary. It helps you believe your dreams while you're inside them, and then let them go when you wake. And here's a curious twist. Many psychedelics, LSD, psilocybin, DMT, work by binding to serotonin receptors, especially the 5-HT2-ampere receptor. They don't add serotonin. They just trick the brain into thinking serotonin has arrived with fireworks. It's a chemical illusion, a hijacking of the same pathways that normally regulate your sense of self, your perception of time, your emotional filtering, which might explain why, after a psychedelic experience, some people describe a renewed sense of connection, clarity, or purpose. It's not that serotonin gave them those feelings. It's that their brain temporarily lost the filters that normally suppress them. But that's a story for later. For now, as you drift, imagine that your pineal gland is beginning its slow alchemy. That serotonin is transforming, molecule by molecule, into the hormone of dreams. Your eyes grow heavier. The world begins to fade. And inside your brain, in the quietest spaces, the serotonin you made today is preparing the theater for your sleep tonight. Sometimes your stomach knows you're sad before your eyes do. A heaviness, a twist, a sudden drop, like an elevator descending with no warning. That sensation so often dismissed as just in your head isn't in your head at all. It's in your gut, or maybe both. Because serotonin doesn't respect that old separation between body and mind. It connects them. The gut is sometimes called the second brain, but perhaps that's unfair. It might actually be your first brain, older, more primal, whispering instincts long before thought was born. And in this ancient system, serotonin plays the role of translator. You eat, you feel full, serotonin. You fast, you get anxious, serotonin. You get butterflies before speaking, serotonin again. Not because it's emotional itself, but because it links the circuits that make emotional and physical states inseparable. You can't tease them apart. You were never supposed to. Imagine two children holding a string between two tin cans. That's your brain and your belly. Serotonin is the tension in the string. When it slackens or pulls too tight, the message gets distorted. And this tension affects more than hunger. It shapes how you trust your sensations. Let's say you're in a new environment, a crowded street, foreign smells, unknown faces. Your gut begins scanning. Is it safe to eat here? To breathe? To stay? These aren't conscious thoughts. These are ancient assessments. And serotonin's levels subtly rising or falling in response help determine your answer. A stable serotonin system says, "You're okay, keep going." A dysregulated one says, "Get out." This is the foundation of what we call anxiety. Not just worry, but the physical rehearsal of danger. Serotonin's role isn't to erase the danger, it's to interpret it, to decide whether the lion is real or just the sound of wind behind a tree. But here's the twist. The gut can influence this balance. If your microbiome is disrupted, say, from antibiotics, stress, illness, or even a poor diet, the cells that make serotonin in the gut may change their output, and the messages they send up the vagus nerve shift in tone. Suddenly, what used to feel fine feels wrong. You might find yourself withdrawing, avoiding situations you once enjoyed, and you won't be able to explain why. Just something feels off. That's serotonin's subtle fingerprint. It's not always loud enough to be heard, but it is felt like a slight breeze nudging the weather of your mind. And it works both ways. Mental stress can slow digestion, tighten muscles, alter appetite. That's the brain talking back. You are not a tower with flaws. You are a loop. Serotonin dances both directions like a tide, never fully still. This is why certain therapies for depression, like cognitive behavioral therapy, work best when they also address the body. Food, breath, movement, all of these feed the serotonin circuit. Consider this. A meal rich in tryptophan, think oats, eggs, turkey, nuts, can elevate tryptophan levels in the blood. Pair that meal with some slow carbohydrates, and insulin helps shepherd tryptophan into the brain. There, it becomes serotonin. Later, when darkness falls, that serotonin becomes melatonin. And you sleep? That's right. What you had for lunch might affect how deeply you dream, not because food is magic, but because serotonin doesn't forget. Even light plays its part. Morning light hitting your retinas sends a signal down to your hypothalamus, adjusting your circadian rhythm. It boosts serotonin production and helps calibrate your body's sense of when you are. That's why light therapy helps with seasonal depression. Not because the light cheers you up, but because it tunes the system that enables you to feel joy at all. Stillness matters too. In meditation, your breathing slows. Your gut shifts into rest and digest. Serotonin release begins to rise, subtle, steady, not as a burst, but as a reassurance, a signal that all systems are safe. This is how the body tells itself it is not in danger. Serotonin is part of that language. And yes, even touch, a hug, a hand on your shoulder, the warmth of a blanket tucked around your chest. These activate pressure receptors that connect directly to vagus nerve pathways. They tell your gut, you are safe now, and serotonin follows. You feel grounded without knowing why. No single action fixes everything, but each small input, sunlight, food, stillness, touch, can help the loop reset. This is why healing is often boring. No dramatic breakthroughs, just quiet repetitions that convince the system to soften again. Serotonin responds to this softness, and it remembers. So tonight, as you rest, picture the soft lining of your intestines gently pulsing, not because you're digesting food, but because your entire body is digesting experience, the day's emotions, the quiet of the room, the rhythm of your breath. It all becomes part of the dialogue. And serotonin? It's still translating, still whispering between your organs, still weaving a sense of calm, not because life is easy, but because you are allowed to feel safe. The clock inside you doesn't tick, it glows. At the center of your brain, tucked deep beneath folds of thought and memory, is a tiny bundle of neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, your master clock. It tells your body what time it is, even in perfect darkness. But it doesn't keep this rhythm alone. Serotonin is its quiet conductor. It's easy to think of sleep as a simple binary, on or off, awake or not, but that's not how your biology sees it. Sleep is a tide, not a switch, and serotonin is part of the tide's pull. It builds slowly, layer by layer, helping your brain ease from one state into the next. You don't fall asleep. You are led there. Each day, as light hits your eyes, serotonin levels rise. They help you feel alert, balanced, focused not in a caffeinated way, but in a quietly competent one. Then, as darkness returns, serotonin begins its evening shift. It becomes something else. Your pineal gland, located near the center of your brain, takes that serotonin and begins a chemical transformation. The molecule is methylated, acetylated, and reshaped until it becomes melatonin, the hormone of night. So yes, melatonin is made from serotonin. Your dreams begin in daylight. This connection is why sleep and mood are so deeply entwined, not just emotionally, but chemically. Depression, for instance, often comes with disordered sleep trouble, falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking too early. It's not that the person is unwilling to rest. It's that the internal tide won't rise, because the molecules are misfiring, and serotonin is one of the earliest waves. Imagine this. You're lying in bed after a long day. Your eyes are closed, but your thoughts are loud. Serotonin is still moving, slowly reducing activity in parts of your brain that keep you alert: your frontal cortex, your reticular formation, like someone dimming the lights in a theater before the show begins. Next, melatonin enters the scene. Your body cools slightly, muscles loosen, breathing slows. You begin slipping beneath the surface of consciousness. But even here, serotonin hasn't disappeared. It lingers in the background, regulating your sleep architecture, the balance between REM and non-REM stages, ensuring the story of your night has rhythm, not just blankness. If serotonin is disrupted, this architecture collapses. You might sleep for hours and still feel unrested, or dream vividly and wake feeling drained. Or, worse, you might get trapped in the restless borderlands between sleep and wake, too tired to rise, too wired to drift. This is why sleep medications that only target melatonin sometimes fail, because serotonin wasn't prepared. The foundation wasn't built. It's like trying to start a movie without turning on the projector. Now imagine your first breath upon waking. That intake of morning air, cool against your throat. That first glance at the window, at the light filtering through your curtains. That stretch, that yawn. Serotonin is already on the move, responding to brightness, adjusting your internal clock back into daytime mode. You've only been awake for 15 seconds, but serotonin is already laying the track for your emotional balance today. It's setting the tone, not your mood exactly, but the stability of your mood. Whether emotions will wash through you like waves or slam against you like a storm. This is why morning habits matter, not because they fix everything, but because they signal the system. A bit of sunlight, a glass of water, a stretch. These small rituals help remind your serotonin system, we're awake now, you're safe, begin the day. Serotonin is listening, and it doesn't just influence sleep timing, it also plays a role in sleep content. Some researchers believe that serotonin helps regulate muscle tone during REM sleep, the stage where dreams bloom most vividly. When you dream of running, flying, falling, it's serotonin that keeps your body from actually doing it. It paralyzes you, protects you from acting out your dreams, like a safety lock. Without enough serotonin, this lock might fail. You might twitch, flail, even rise in your sleep, or, in rare cases, enter REM without paralysis, resulting in dream enactment disorders. Your brain forgets that dreaming isn't real. So again, serotonin isn't dramatic. It's protective. It doesn't just help you fall asleep. It makes sure sleep doesn't betray you. And when it works, the result is quiet magic. You drift. You forget. You heal. But serotonin's work doesn't end there, because rest isn't only about the absence of activity. It's about recalibration. While you sleep, your brain prunes connections, files memories, consolidates emotional experiences, and serotonin helps decide which signals are real and which can be erased. Think of it like a dream librarian, shelving stories, discarding chaos, making sure you wake with a little more clarity than you had before. Even if you don't remember the dream, even if you think you slept badly, your serotonin system was still at work. And that's comforting, isn't it? To know that, even when your consciousness goes quiet, your body continues the work of care, quietly, chemically, faithfully. So tonight, as you lie beneath the weight of your blanket, remember, sleep is not a shutdown. It's a conversation, and serotonin is still speaking in the dark. You've been told that serotonin makes you happy, but that's not quite right. Serotonin doesn't throw you a surprise party. It doesn't flood your brain with glitter. It doesn't whisper, "You're amazing," in your ear, although, admittedly, that would be nice. Serotonin is subtler than that. If dopamine is the high five, serotonin is the steady hand on your back. If dopamine gets you to jump out of bed, serotonin helps you feel okay staying there. If dopamine is a laugh in a loud room, serotonin is the gentle sigh that follows. In short, serotonin doesn't create emotions, it modulates them. Think of it like the thermostat of your emotional system. It doesn't control the weather, but it sets the tone, a little warmer, a little cooler, a little brighter, a little dimmer. It's always adjusting, trying to keep things within range, trying to keep you from boiling or freezing. Without serotonin, your emotional reactions become exaggerated. Too sharp, too sudden, too long-lasting. You become more reactive and less reflective, less able to filter, buffer, absorb. It's not that you feel more or less, it's that you feel everything raw. This is where the idea of emotional regulation comes in. Serotonin helps with that. It smooths the spikes, it rounds the edges. Not by numbing you, but by giving your brain more time to choose its response. You don't fly off the handle, you pause, you notice, you stay. It's not about joy, it's about resilience. Let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. A low serotonin brain might feel instant rage, heart rate rises, muscles tighten, you lean on the horn like it owes you rent. A higher serotonin system, on the other hand, might still feel annoyed, but then lets it pass. Maybe even chuckles, maybe even forgets. Zama input, different output. That's not a personality flaw, that's chemistry. And it doesn't mean serotonin is a moral force. It doesn't make you good. It doesn't judge. It just helps your nervous system assess what's worth reacting to and what's safe to ignore. Serotonin is what lets you choose calm, even when chaos is available. This has implications far beyond traffic. In depression, serotonin levels are often low, but the sadness isn't what stands out, it's the flatness, the disconnection. Things that used to light up your inner world, music, laughter, small acts of kindness, now pass by without resonance. Not because you don't care, but because serotonin isn't there to help you feel the care. It's like someone turned down the contrast on your emotional television. Everything's still there, you just can't make out the shapes. Anxiety, too, has a serotonin signature. The circuitry becomes hyperactive. Tiny threats feel enormous. Safety never settles in. You're always bracing for something, even when nothing's coming. Again, serotonin doesn't remove fear. It just lets you put it down when the danger passes. It's the chemical of okay, of enough, of let's try again tomorrow. Even in healthy brains, serotonin levels fluctuate. Low during illness, lower during inflammation, lower after nights of poor sleep. If you've ever felt emotionally brittle during a cold, or teary for no reason when your body was worn out, that was serotonin whispering its fatigue. And still it works so quietly. It doesn't demand. It doesn't broadcast. You never feel serotonin itself. You only feel what it permits. That's the beauty of it. Now, imagine serotonin as a dimmer switch. Turn it up, and emotions feel brighter, but not blinding. Turn it down, and the room gets dusky, but not black. It's not all or nothing. It's nuance. And nuance is what makes us human. It's what allows us to see the difference between "I'm sad" and "this sadness will pass." It's what lets us say, "I'm anxious, but I'm okay." Serotonin doesn't stop the storm. It just hands you the umbrella. That, in itself, is extraordinary. Because life isn't predictable. It rains, often, sometimes inside you. And serotonin's job isn't to pretend otherwise. It just helps you walk through it without drowning. One study found that when people recall emotional memories, those with higher serotonin activity have more balanced responses, not more joy or less pain, but clarity, a sense that they can see the memory without being pulled back into it. That's serotonin again, the thermostat, the buffer, the guide. And here's the funny part. You can't feel serotonin directly, but you can feel what happens when it's missing. The world feels harsher. Your own thoughts feel louder. Every little annoyance becomes a knife. The thermostat breaks. The system overheats. But when it's working, you don't notice it. You just feel like yourself. Stable, soft, capable of smiling at the sky without knowing why. So tonight, as your body winds down and the last remnants of serotonin become melatonin, let yourself trust the quiet. You've felt many things today, and serotonin has been there adjusting, steadying, shaping the background music of your experience. You may not have noticed, but you've felt its absence, which means you've also felt its gift. Too little, and your world sinks into grey. Too much, and your body trembles from within. Serotonin, like so many things in biology, is a balancing act, precarious and precise. It's not a matter of more is better. In fact, the system thrives on just enough, because when serotonin veers off balance, whether too low or too high, the effects ripple out in ways both subtle and terrifying. Let's begin with the lack. Low serotonin has long been associated with depression, but the relationship isn't quite that simple. Depression isn't always caused by low serotonin, and low serotonin doesn't always cause depression. Still, the overlap is undeniable. When serotonin levels fall below baseline, your emotional regulation phrase, small stresses become monumental, the colors drain out of experiences, the world loses its texture. You're not necessarily crying all the time. More often, you're not crying at all, you're just blank. You go through your day as if underwater, muted, slowed, vaguely apart from everything. Things happen to you, but rarely through you. It's like the emotional glass separating you from the world has thickened. That's serotonin. It hasn't disappeared, but it's no longer carrying the emotional current that keeps you present. The result? A numbness that's hard to name and harder to escape. And then there's the body. Low serotonin can make you physically uncomfortable. Your appetite may shrink or spike. Your sleep may shatter into restless fragments. Your digestion may rebel. You might feel aches that have no origin and fatigue that no nap can fix. Your body and mind are trying to function in low visibility. Now flip the switch. Too much serotonin and the problem becomes something else entirely. There's a name for it. Serotonin syndrome. And despite how pleasant it might sound, it's anything but. It can happen when multiple drugs combine to overstimulate serotonin receptors. Sometimes it's an antidepressant plus a migraine medication. Sometimes it's a recreational substance layered over a prescription. The result? The system overloads. Symptoms can include agitation, confusion, rapid heart rate, high blood pressure, dilated pupils, muscle rigidity, tremors, even hallucinations or cytheris. In extreme cases, serotonin syndrome can be life-threatening. The nervous system goes into hyperdrive. Everything speeds up, muscles contract, the body overheats, and control disappears. It's a reminder that serotonin isn't gentle by default. It is powerful. It is essential, but it must be held within boundaries. And your body spends every hour of your life trying to keep it that way. Producing, releasing, recycling, breaking down, constantly adjusting the dial in response to thousands of internal signals. Even within the normal range, individuals can experience very different responses to serotonin shifts. Genetics play a part. So do hormone levels, stress exposure, trauma history, and even the state of your gut flora. Some brains are more sensitive to serotonin fluctuations. Others have less efficient receptors. Some may clear serotonin too quickly. Others, not quickly enough. Which is why the same medication can be a miracle for one person and ineffective or even harmful for another. But what's remarkable is how often the body does get it right. Each time you fall asleep, digest a meal, laugh at a dumb joke, feel comfortable in a crowd, or recover from emotional stress, serotonin was there, quiet, in the background, tuning the system. It never asks for credit. It just wants stability. Of course, balance doesn't mean flatness. You still feel joy, sorrow, anger, wonder. But serotonin helps prevent those feelings from becoming floods. It stops the lows from pulling you under. And yes, sometimes it prevents the highs from lifting you too far off the ground. A calm brain is a flexible brain, and serotonin is what makes that flexibility possible. You don't want your emotional thermostat set at ecstatic all the time. That's exhausting and unreal. You want a system that can respond to life's complexity, its highs and lows, its beauty and boredom without breaking apart. Serotonin gives you that system, and when it's broken, everything feels like too much or not enough. But here's the most hopeful part. Even when your serotonin is depleted, the system isn't gone. It's waiting. The receptors are still there. The enzymes are still there. The transporters are still trying. Like a city in blackout, the infrastructure remains, even if the lights are out. You can rebuild. With rest, with nourishment, with care, with time. The body wants balance. The brain wants rhythm. Serotonin wants to return. And tonight, as you float in the early stages of sleep, your serotonin system is still adjusting, still releasing just enough to keep the dream architecture in place, still filtering the day's noise, still helping your muscles release tension, still watching over your emotional buffer, not because it needs to make you happy, but because it wants to keep you steady. The river hasn't dried up. It's just flowing beneath the surface now. Let's shrink ourselves for a moment, down, down, impossibly small until we arrive at the gap, a synapse. This is where it all happens. Two neurones sit close, but never quite touch. One sends, one receives. In between them, a microscopic space so small, you could fit 100 of them across a single red blood cell. And in that space, that's where serotonin speaks. But it doesn't speak in words. It floats. Here's how it works. Inside the sending neuron, called the presynaptic neuron, serotonin is packaged up into little vesicles. Think of them like tiny chemical gift boxes. When the neuron fires, those boxes fuse with the cell wall and spill their contents into the synaptic cleft, the little gap between the two neurons. Now, serotonin is free. It drifts across the gap. On the other side, the receiving neuron, called the postsynaptic neuron, has receptors waiting. These aren't passive doors. They're shaped specifically to recognize serotonin's chemical fingerprint. If the fit is right, the door opens and a message gets through. That message might tell the neuron to fire, or to stay quiet, or to release another chemical, or to change its own sensitivity. It depends entirely on which receptor is involved and where in the brain this is happening. But here's the kicker. The serotonin doesn't linger. After it delivers its message, or sometimes even before it's removed, it's either broken down by an enzyme called monoamine oxidase, the molecular janitor, or more often it's reabsorbed by the presynaptic neuron in a process called reuptake. Reuptake is nature's recycling bin. The neuron sucks the serotonin back inside, repackages it, and gets ready to use it again. Why so fast? Because timing is everything. Too much serotonin in the synapse for too long, and the system gets overwhelmed. Too little, and the message never lands. So the brain clears the space with precision, fast, tidy, controlled. This dance happens constantly in billions of synapses, over and over. Release, drift, bind, reuptake, a symphony of communication on a scale you can barely imagine. Now, when we say a drug boosts serotonin, what it usually does is interfere with this dance. It doesn't pour more serotonin into the system, it just messes with the reuptake step. This is how selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, work. They bind to the reuptake pumps on the presynaptic neuron and block them. That means serotonin stays in the synapse a little longer, lingers, hangs out, increases the chance that it binds to a receptor and delivers its message. SSRIs are widely used to treat depression and anxiety. But again, not because they add happiness. They simply let serotonin do its job a little more effectively. They buy it time. Imagine a message in a bottle floating across a river. Reuptake is like scooping that bottle up before it reaches shore. An SSRI lets it keep drifting, so maybe, just maybe, it reaches someone who can read it. But here's where things get strange. The effects of SSRIs aren't immediate. You might expect that leaving more serotonin in the synapse would lead to a quick emotional lift, but often the real benefits don't kick in for weeks. Why? Because the brain doesn't just respond to levels, it responds to patterns. SSRIs don't just increase serotonin signaling, they trigger a cascade of long-term changes, receptor sensitivity shifts, gene expression updates, even the growth of new neural connections, neuroplasticity, the rewiring of emotional circuits. It's like opening more windows in a house, not to flood it with sunlight, but to gradually let the light change the temperature inside. And not everyone responds the same. Some people feel better, some feel numb, some feel nothing. Others feel worse before they improve. It's not a one-size-fits-all magic. It's chemistry doing its complicated thing in a very personal landscape. Still, the underlying principle is elegant. Modulation through time. Not control, not domination, just time. A little more serotonin in the gap, a little longer to listen, a little more chance to recalibrate. And that's not limited to medication. Sleep, sunlight, diet, meditation, each one in its own way affects the serotonin life cycle. Each one changes the way the bottle floats. And here's something tender. Your brain is trying. Even when it feels broken, even when you feel lost or unmoored or flat, your neurons are still sending bottles, still hoping the message gets across, still cleaning the gap, still trying to reset the system. That's not failure. That's resilience. You are not a malfunction. You're a signal in motion. And tonight, as serotonin finishes its day shift and lets melatonin begin its night work, that gap between neurons keeps opening and closing, over and over, a river of silence, carrying messages across. You don't have to steer it. You don't even have to understand it. Just rest. The system is still speaking, even in your dreams. Let's linger for a moment in that microscopic gap, the synapse, because the way serotonin leaves is just as important as how it arrives. Remember the reuptake system, that little recycling pump on the sending neuron? It's not just a cleanup crew, it's a gatekeeper. If serotonin is the message in a bottle, then the reuptake transporter is the hand that snatches it back before the other side can read it. Too quick, and the message is lost. Too slow, and the space gets flooded with noise. Now enter the quiet revolution of modern pharmacology, SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Their job is deceptively simple: block the reuptake pump, just for a little while, just enough to let serotonin float longer in that synaptic cleft, increasing the chances it will dock with a receptor and deliver its subtle message. You might expect a change like that to feel immediate, but here's the strange part. It doesn't. When someone begins taking an SSRI like fluoxetine, Prozac, sertraline, Zoloft, or escitalopram, Lexapro, they don't usually feel a shift in hours or even days. It often takes weeks. Why? Because the brain is not a switch, it's a garden. And serotonin is not the sun, it's the climate. SSRIs change the environment in which emotional regulation takes place. They don't introduce new thoughts, they just clear the path for thoughts to pass through with less resistance. Think of it like this. You're standing in a foggy forest. The trees are there, the path is there, but everything is blurred. An SSRI doesn't chop down the trees. It just gradually lifts the fog. And some days, the fog returns. That's part of the process. Still, not everyone reacts the same. Some people find relief, a return of appetite, a softening of panic, a flicker of laughter they forgot they missed. Others feel dulled, as if the volume on joy and sorrow both got turned down, not suffering exactly, but not fully living either. And then there are those who don't respond at all, who feel betrayed by the promise, who begin to wonder if the bottle ever had a message in it to begin with. That's the difficult truth about SSRIs. They work but imperfectly, unevenly, partially, because serotonin is only one player in a symphony of mood. There's also dopamine, norepinephrine, Georgia BA, glutamate, and then, beyond the molecules, memory, trauma, belief, experience. The brain is not a chemistry set, it's a story. and serotonin is just one of the editors. That said, for many people, SSRIs help the story flow again, not by rewriting it, just by slowing it down so you can read it line by line. SSRIs also have side effects, sometimes subtle dry mouth, slight nausea, vivid dreams, sometimes harder sexual dysfunction, insomnia, apathy. These aren't punishments. They're the result of serotonin's wide reach. Remember, serotonin receptors are everywhere, in your gut, your blood vessels, your skin. So when you increase its presence, the whole body feels it. That's why fine-tuning dosage is an art, why some people need months to find the right balance, why patience is part of the treatment, and why kindness to yourself is essential. You are not weak for needing help. You are not unnatural for taking medicine. You are not chemically wrong. You are alive. And living in a body this complex sometimes means accepting help. Sometimes it means trying something new. And sometimes, beautifully, it means noticing that your laughter came back without you realizing when. But what SSRIs really show us is that time matters. They aren't instant mood enhancers. They're gardeners. They prepare the soil. They water the roots. And slowly, over weeks, neuroplasticity begins. New connections form, new patterns emerge, old habits weaken. The brain, once stuck in storm, starts to shift. And serotonin is part of that shift. Not the hero, not the villain, just the climate change that lets seeds bloom again. That's the magic of reuptake inhibition. It doesn't add more light, just lets light stay a little longer. So tonight, as your serotonin gently dissolves into melatonin and your dreams begin to rise from behind your eyes, remember this: there is a tiny, invisible dance happening in your brain. A chemical waltz, billions of times a second. A message released, a message received, a message reclaimed. And sometimes, when you need it, a little help holding on to the light. Not forever, just long enough. If dopamine is the spotlight, serotonin is the stage. One makes you leap, the other helps you stay. We love dopamine. It gets all the headlines. The thrill chemical, the motivator, the reason you chase love, likes, sugar, success. Dopamine's voice is loud, immediate. Do this again, it says. That felt amazing. But serotonin? It's quieter, more patient. It doesn't shout rewards. It whispers safety. The two don't compete exactly, but they live in tension, like housemates with different sleep schedules. One stays up all night chasing novelty. The other just wants a steady bedtime and clean dishes. And yet, you need them both. Imagine this. You're walking into a party. Dopamine floods you with anticipation. Maybe someone cool is here. Maybe there's cake. Serotonin, meanwhile, scans the room, checks the lighting, notices the exits. It helps you decide, do I belong here? Is this safe? Dopamine pushes forward. Serotonin regulates the brakes. Together, they balance motivation and caution, excitement and stability. One gets you through the door, the other helps you stay. Now picture a different scenario. You win an award. Dopamine spikes, yes. Success. Serotonin, on the other hand, helps that feeling linger. It stabilizes the glow so it doesn't evaporate instantly. It lets you rest inside your joy rather than constantly needing a new one. This is why a dopamine-heavy system, think addiction, compulsion, endless scrolling, feels so unstable. The highs never hold, the craving returns too soon. Serotonin's stabilizing hand is missing. The emotion has no anchor. But tip too far the other way, and you risk emotional stasis. A life without sparkle, without risk. Without those beautiful dopamine-pulled moments when you fall in love, take a leap, or eat a perfect mango at midnight. Balance. That's the dance. Now let's look at biology. Dopamine and serotonin interact across multiple pathways, especially in the striatum, a brain region involved in movement, reward, and mood. There, they modulate each other's release. When one rises, the other may dip, like seesaws. But not enemies, just partners with different styles. Some medications affect both systems. SSRI, SNRIs, for instance. target serotonin and norepinephrine. Others, like bupropion, affect dopamine more directly. And the emerging field of psychedelic-assisted therapy? It's fascinating, precisely because it tweaks both. LSD and psilocybin primarily affect serotonin receptors, particularly the 5-HT2-ampere type, but they also ripple out to dopamine networks. The result? A complex storm of connection, insight, and emotional flooding. It's not joy on tap. It's the lifting of filters, the breakdown of walls. For some, it's a breakthrough. For others, too much, too fast. Because serotonin isn't just emotional, it's organizational. It filters, it regulates, it helps you structure your response to the world. Imagine serotonin as the editor of your inner novel. Dopamine writes wild, impulsive drafts. Serotonin revises, cuts repetition, smooths the timeline. Both are vital. Without dopamine, no story gets written. Without serotonin, it never makes sense. Now here's a more subtle distinction. Dopamine is often about wanting, the drive to pursue, to attain, to act. Serotonin is often about having, the ability to appreciate, to maintain, to be. That's why high dopamine states can feel manic. You're chasing without arrival. Serotonin lets you arrive and stay long enough to enjoy it. This has deep implications for how we live. A dopamine-fueled culture, always hungry, always reaching, often mistakes novelty for value. You scroll, click, swipe, consume. But afterward, do you feel more at peace or just more empty? Serotonin doesn't reward consumption, it rewards connection, to place, to rhythm, to others. Which leads us to something curious. Serotonin is deeply social. It helps regulate status perception, trust, social bonding. Lobsters with higher serotonin levels literally hold their claws higher. Monkeys with better social standing have more balanced serotonin rhythms. Humans too, when we feel excluded, serotonin dips. When we feel accepted, it rises. So while dopamine might say, impress them, serotonin says, you belong. That's a different kind of joy. And when those two align, that's presence. That's satisfaction. That's the feeling of dancing in a room full of people you trust, with no need to check your phone. So tonight, as your brain settles into sleep, both systems are winding down. Dopamine, tired from the day's adventures, begins to fade. Serotonin, steady and loyal, prepares the body for dreams. You don't need to chase anything now. You don't need to earn joy. You're already here. Let serotonin hold the moment. Let dopamine sleep. There are emotions that arrive like lightning and others that settle in like fog. If dopamine sparks the rush of falling in love, serotonin is what makes the relationship feel safe a year later. One is motion, the other depth. And nowhere is serotonin's influence more quietly powerful than in shaping the long arc of your emotional life. Not in the spikes, in the slopes. That's the thing with serotonin, it's not a firework. It's a slow geological force. A river carving a canyon over time. A chemical that doesn't declare how you feel in this moment, but rather how feeling itself unfolds through your day, your week, your year. Its emotional tone in slow motion. Imagine you're watching a movie. The plot is full of twists, joy, fear, laughter, sorrow. But in the background, there's a soundtrack. You don't notice it consciously most of the time, but if it were missing, you'd feel it. The silence would be deafening. That soundtrack? That's serotonin. It's not the emotion, it's the frame for emotion. When serotonin is working well, your internal soundtrack supports each feeling appropriately. A sad scene feels poignant, not crushing. A happy moment feels sweet, not manic. You experience the emotion, then you let it go. But when serotonin falters, the emotional soundtrack distorts. The sad scene drags on. The happy one feels distant. Your brain doesn't move smoothly between states. It sticks, repeats, echoes. This is part of what makes depression so exhausting. Not just the presence of sadness, but its resistance to change. Emotions become static. You don't just feel down, you feel stuck in feeling down. Serotonin's job is to keep things moving, not to make you happy, but to help you transition. to let you wake from a nightmare and believe you're safe again, to let laughter rise even after tears, to trust that feelings are states, not prisons. It also helps you anticipate how you'll feel in the future, a concept called affective forecasting. That little mental voice that says, if I do this, I'll probably enjoy it, or that might overwhelm me today. Serotonin plays a role in shaping that voice, which means serotonin affects your choices not by telling you what to do, but by adjusting the emotional weight of each option. Go for a walk or stay in bed, call a friend or scroll alone, say yes or say no. Serotonin colors the emotional forecast. When it's in balance, the future feels navigable, even if it's uncertain. And it doesn't act alone. It interacts with your memory system, particularly the hippocampus and amygdala, to shape how emotional experiences are encoded. High serotonin brains tend to store emotionally tinged memories more evenly, while dysregulated systems may overemphasize fear or threat. That's why some people relive painful moments on repeat. They're chemically trapped in them, not by choice, by structure. It's also why healing can feel slow, because you're not just forgetting pain, you're rewiring the pathways that say, this is still happening, and serotonin is part of that repair. Let's bring this closer to home. Think about a time you felt fragile, maybe after a loss, a breakup, or even just a period of high stress. You may have found yourself avoiding things you used to enjoy, social plans, songs you loved, even foods that once brought comfort. That wasn't laziness. It was your emotional processing system, largely guided by serotonin, telling you these things no longer feel safe, not because they're bad, but because the emotional frame has shifted. And the process of recovering? It's not about forcing yourself to feel better. It's about relearning safety. Each time you go outside, call a friend, smile at the sky, you're nudging the system back into motion, and serotonin follows. Slowly, the emotional tone readjusts, the soundtrack changes key, and you begin to believe again. That joy is possible. That peace is real. That sadness won't last forever. This is why emotional healing often looks like nothing, like folding laundry, cooking breakfast, sitting quietly in a sunbeam, because serotonin doesn't rush. It returns you to yourself gently, and when it does, you'll notice it not in fireworks, but in the smallest details. A laugh that comes easier, a song that makes you close your eyes, the ability to pause when you're angry, the space between thought and reaction. That space? That's serotonin's gift. Tonight, as you drift, your brain is still adjusting emotional tone. Even in sleep, serotonin helps regulate transitions between sleep stages, each with their own flavor of experience. Light, deep, dreaming, stillness, movement. You move through these states like a swimmer moving through underwater colors. Serotonin guides the passage, ensures the switch is smooth, keeps your emotional temperature stable, even while your conscious mind lets go. Because life is not one mood, it's a flow, a film, a score. And serotonin is still composing. Picture a room full of people. You enter. You don't know anyone, but something in you starts scanning the posture of the group, the glances exchanged, the little micro-hierarchies that govern who's listening, who's speaking, who's just trying to blend in. You're not even thinking about it consciously, but something inside you feels it. That feeling, that reading of the social atmosphere, that's serotonin. It's not just a mood regulator, it's a social radar, a chemical lens through which we perceive safety, status, belonging, and rejection. And it's older than you think, because serotonin isn't just for humans. It shows up across the animal kingdom in creatures far less chatty and anxious than we are. Lobsters, for instance. In a famous experiment, lobsters who win fights show elevated serotonin levels. They carry themselves differently afterward, claws higher, movements more fluid, and lobsters who lose, their serotonin dips. They retreat, their posture slumps. Sound familiar? Now, we are obviously more complex than lobsters, but the principle still holds. Serotonin helps regulate not only how you feel, but how you position yourself in the social web. Are you safe here? Are you dominant, submissive, welcome, ignored? These aren't judgments, they're instincts, and serotonin modulates them all. This is what makes it so fascinating and so quietly powerful. Serotonin doesn't just shape how you feel about yourself, it shapes how you think others feel about you. Ever walked away from a conversation and wondered, did I say something weird? Or looked at a text and suddenly felt a cold wave of, they're mad at me? Often, that perception isn't based in reality. It's based in chemistry. When serotonin is low, you're more likely to interpret neutral cues as negative. A blank face becomes a scowl. A delay in response feels like rejection. Silence feels loaded. Your brain fills in emotional blanks with anxiety. Not because you're broken, but because serotonin's filter is thin. And when serotonin is balanced, those same cues feel different. A pause in conversation is just a pause. A friend's busy day doesn't feel like abandonment. You trust, reflexively, that you are okay. You feel safe enough. And that safety opens the door to connection. Because here's a strange truth. To truly connect with others, you have to feel okay being seen. Serotonin helps with that. It helps you look someone in the eye, tolerate vulnerability, sit in awkwardness without shrinking. This is why social anxiety often has a serotonin fingerprint. Not just the fear of being judged, but the expectation that you will be. That your presence is a burden. That your voice is too loud, your laugh too sharp, your silence too long. It's not just about confidence, it's about chemical readiness for connection. Interestingly, this link is so deep that some antidepressants, particularly SSRIs, are also used to treat social anxiety. They don't erase awkwardness, but they help soften the emotional edge of perceived threat. They let you stay in the room. And serotonin doesn't just help you connect in person. It even modulates your experience of social media. Scroll through Instagram in a low serotonin state, and you might feel envy, loneliness, isolation. The highlight reels of other people's lives become daggers. But in a more balanced state, those same posts might feel inspiring or at least tolerable. Again, same input, different filter. That's serotonin. It's not the content of your social life, it's the texture. Even childhood experiences can shape your serotonin blueprint. Early attachment, parental warmth, the predictability of care, all these help build the brain's expectation of safety. If those foundations are shaky, the adult serotonin system may struggle to maintain equilibrium in the face of social uncertainty. But brains can heal, and serotonin can relearn. That's the power of therapy, support, even community. They create safe spaces, and serotonin responds to safety. It adjusts, it remembers, it rewrites. One fascinating study found that when people experienced intentional kindness, being seen, appreciated, or touched gently, their serotonin levels rose, not as a reward but as a signal of social integration. That's the secret. Serotonin thrives in connection. Not crowds, not popularity, not performance. Belonging, the sense that you are part of something, that your presence is not only allowed but welcome. So tonight, as you lie in the quiet, feel this. You are not just a mind in a body. You are a being shaped by touch, voice, trust, and presence. And even now, your serotonin system is listening to the silence, to the safety, to the rhythms of stillness. It's recalibrating, releasing, reminding you, you are not alone. Even in sleep, your body knows how to feel connected. Even in dreams, your chemistry is practicing belonging. Your memories don't just sit in your mind like folders on a desktop. They breathe, they change, they return when you least expect them, and stay silent when you beg them to speak. Some slip away quietly, others refuse to let go, and if you've ever wondered why certain moments burn so brightly in your mind while others fade into mist, you might want to thank, yes, again, serotonin. Because serotonin doesn't just shape your present emotion, it tags your past with emotional weight. Let's say you're walking past a bakery, and suddenly a wave of sadness hits you. Not overwhelming, just there, like a ghost of a feeling. You don't even know why, but your brain does. Maybe that bakery used to remind you of someone, a lost friend, a childhood ritual, something good, something gone. And serotonin? It helped encode that memory in the first place. Here's how it works. When an event happens, especially one that carries emotional significance, your brain lights up in a coordinated chemical show. The amygdala gets involved, your emotional alarm system. The hippocampus files the memory in long-term storage. And serotonin, floating nearby, acts as a kind of highlighter. It says, "This matters. Remember this." But serotonin's highlight pen isn't only for big traumas or triumphs. It marks emotional tone, how safe you felt, how supported, how confused, how seen. Not just the facts, but the feeling around the facts. So years later, when something similar happens, same smell, same song, same glance across a room, your serotonin system helps determine what emotional color gets pulled forward. Does the memory bring warmth? Or warning? Reassurance? Or regret? That emotional filter is shaped by serotonin, and the influence doesn't end there. In the consolidation phase of memory, that is, the time right after the experience, serotonin continues to reinforce or soften emotional encoding. In simple terms, the more serotonin around at the time, the more likely your brain is to hold on to that emotional memory. This is why therapy often focuses on recontextualizing old memories. You can't delete a trauma, but you can reprocess it with new emotional tone. And as the new experience of safety builds, serotonin helps re-tag that memory as less dangerous, less sharp. That's healing. It's not forgetting. It's refilming the lighting of the scene. Of course, memory isn't a simple replay button. It's more like a watercolor painting, blurry at the edges, colored by the mood in which it's recalled. And serotonin helps determine that mood. So if your serotonin system is dysregulated, even neutral memories can feel threatening. Imagine remembering your first school recital. In one emotional state, you recall the joy, the applause, the proud faces. In another, you remember the awkwardness, the wrong note, the moment someone didn't clap. Same event, different chemical lens. And sometimes, it's not the memory itself that hurts. It's the feeling it brings up in your body. The stomach drop, the breath pause, that familiar tightening in your chest. That's serotonin's shadow. Now, let's turn the lens forward. Because serotonin doesn't only help you look back, it helps you predict what future memories might be worth forming. This influences attention, what you notice, what you linger on. If serotonin is balanced, you're more likely to focus on things that make emotional sense. The kind word, the moment of connection, a gentle joke. You take it in, you store it. And next time, your brain says, "More of that, please." But if serotonin is low, your attention may fixate on negative cues, rejection, disapproval, risk. And those memories stick harder, not because they're more important, but because they match the tone already set by your chemistry. In other words, serotonin not only writes the score of your emotional life, it curates the soundtrack. That's why building emotional safety matters, because serotonin can only tag what it perceives. And if you start giving it more moments of peace, it will start highlighting those instead. With time, the balance can shift. It's also why trauma, especially in childhood, can leave such a long shadow. Because when serotonin is disrupted early, the emotional tagging system is distorted. Safety feels rare, trust feels dangerous. Memory becomes a minefield. But the system is plastic. New experiences can rewire the way serotonin labels emotional information, through therapy, through healthy relationships, through presence, through time. So tonight, if a memory floats up as you rest one you didn't ask for, don't panic, don't try to fight it, just notice it. Let it be there. Let serotonin do its work. Maybe, just maybe, this time it will file the memory under a new category. Not pain, but processed. And as your dreams begin to stir, your serotonin system continues tagging emotional content behind the scenes, helping you sort, store, release. Memory isn't fixed, and neither are you. You weren't born with a finished emotional system. It grew with you layer by layer, like rings in a tree, and deep in those layers, long before your first memory, serotonin was quietly shaping your inner landscape. In infancy, when words don't exist yet, feelings are the language, a soft voice, a steady heartbeat against your ear, the warmth of being held, the sudden panic when it's gone. These early sensations weren't just comforting or frightening, they were instructions. They taught your brain how to feel, and serotonin was the ink in which those instructions were written. You see, during early childhood, serotonin plays a major role in neurodevelopment. It helps guide the growth of new neurons, the branching of dendrites, the strength of synapses, not randomly, but in response to the environment. How much safety you felt, how much chaos, how much connection. These inputs become the emotional blueprint of your life. Not in a mystical way, in a structural one. The child whose needs were consistently met, the one whose cries were answered, whose world was predictable, tends to develop a serotonin system that's more responsive and balanced. Emotional storms come, yes, but the system knows how to return to calm. But when care is inconsistent or absent, when early life feels unstable, frightening, or neglectful, serotonin signaling can be disrupted. It's not your fault, but the wiring remembers, and that early disruption can leave echoes, difficulty soothing yourself, heightened sensitivity to rejection, a tendency to expect the worst, not because you're dramatic, not because you're broken, but because your brain learned early that the world might not be safe. Serotonin did its best. It adapted to survive. It helped you stay alert, guarded, ready. It may have set your emotional thermostat lower, your sensitivity higher, your warning systems quicker to activate. But survival wiring isn't the same as living. And that's where the work begins. Because while serotonin systems are deeply shaped in childhood, they are not permanently fixed. The brain remains plastic changeable even into adulthood, especially when new experiences contradict the old patterns. That's why therapy matters. That's why kindness matters. That's why consistency, repetition, warmth matter. Every time you experience care you didn't expect, your brain raises one curious eyebrow and says, "Wait, maybe things are different now," and serotonin adjusts accordingly. Even if you didn't grow up in safety, you can practice it now. That's not a slogan, it's a biological truth. You can take a walk and feel the sun and train your serotonin system to expect pleasure. You can sit with a friend and talk about something real and feel your chemistry shift toward trust. You can rest, even if you've never felt truly safe before, and serotonin will begin to relearn. And over time, the blueprint updates. This takes patience, because serotonin isn't dopamine. It's not explosive. It doesn't reward one-off events. It builds slowly, through pattern and repetition, through what you return to again and again. That's how emotional resilience is built, through the quiet normalization of safety. Let's zoom in a little. Even things as small as play in childhood can affect serotonin development. Play is how young brains test boundaries, learn social rules, develop risk tolerance. It teaches you can lose and still be loved. You can fall and still be safe. You can share and not be left behind. If that early play was stunted by trauma, stress, or instability, serotonin systems may grow more reactive. That's why, in adulthood, conflict can feel existential, like you're not just arguing, you're endangered. But again, the map isn't final. You can relearn emotional safety through reparenting, not by erasing the past, but by giving your present self what you once missed. That's not just psychology. That's neurochemistry. Your serotonin system listens, and it changes. So tonight, if you find yourself restless, heart thudding, mind spinning, body tense, and you don't know why, try this. Place a hand gently on your chest. Breathe slowly. Say to yourself, "I am safe now. I am here now. I am not in the past." It may sound silly, but serotonin pays attention to this. Every time you respond to fear with gentleness, the system learns. Every time you choose stillness over panic, presence over shame, rest over self-blame, the system rewires. You're not too late. Your body still listens. Serotonin still remembers how to soothe. And tonight, as you sleep, it will continue building emotional pathways in the background, new connections, new rhythms, a different tone for your internal story. You may have begun with a blueprint you didn't choose, but now you're the architect. Nature gives you the blueprint. Life writes the annotations. You're born with genes that shape your serotonin system, how much you produce, how fast you clear it, how sensitive your receptors are. But those genes aren't destiny, they're possibility. And possibility is shaped by context. This is where the ancient debate of nature versus nurture gets complicated and interesting. Some of us are born with what's called a short allele on a gene known as SLC6A4. It's involved in how the serotonin transporter works, that little pump that reabsorbs serotonin after it's been released. People with this short version are more reactive to their environment, more sensitive to stress, more likely, under adversity, to develop depression. But here's the twist. That same sensitivity also means they're more responsive to care, more capable of deep empathy, more likely to thrive when nurtured. It's a double-edged gift. The modern term for this? Differential susceptibility. Some brains are like dandelions, they grow anywhere. Others are orchids, fragile in bad soil, stunning in good. Serotonin helps explain the difference. So yes, your biology matters, but your biography matters just as much. Imagine your brain as a musical instrument. Your genes built it. Your life has been tuning it. Serotonin is part of the sheet music's subtle background notation that tells the rest of the orchestra when to swell and when to soften. Now think back. What moments have tuned you? A parent's absence, a friend's loyalty, a breakup, a diagnosis, a kind stranger, a series of small rejections, a quiet miracle. Each of these experiences left a trace on your neurochemistry. Not all at once, but in gentle waves, through circuits that your serotonin system helps shape. In trauma, the system may freeze. It learns to expect threat. Emotional reactions become rapid, rigid, exhausting. In healing, the system may soften. It learns to expect safety again. Emotions gain nuance. Pause returns. And the best part? You have some say in this tuning process. Not total control, but influence. This is where lifestyle comes in, not as a punishment, not as a fix-all, but as a conversation with your biology. Here's what speaks fluently to serotonin. Movement, not intense, just rhythmic. Walking, stretching, dancing in the kitchen. Movement increases serotonin availability in certain brain regions. It also improves receptor sensitivity over time. Light. Bright morning light stimulates serotonin production in the retina, which signals your brain to wake, to alert, to align your circadian rhythm. A 10-minute walk in the morning can do more than you think. Food. Serotonin is made from tryptophan, an amino acid found in foods like eggs, nuts, seeds, turkey, oats. But here's the trick. Tryptophan needs help crossing the blood-brain barrier. It competes with other amino acids. A small carb, like a slice of bread, can tip the odds in its favor. Touch, massage, hugs, even placing your own hand on your chest. Touch activates serotonin-linked pathways, especially through the vagus nerve. The body feels safe. The chemistry follows. Sleep. It's both a product of serotonin and a support system for it. Disrupted sleep cycles can dysregulate serotonin, but consistent rest, yes, even naps, helps the system reset. Stillness, meditation, breathwork, prayer, anything that slows the system down and says, you are not in danger right now. Serotonin loves that message. These aren't moral obligations. They're tools, gentle ones, invitations. You don't have to do them perfectly. You just have to do them consistently enough. Because serotonin doesn't respond to intensity. It responds to rhythm. And the more you build small rituals of safety, morning sun, evening wind downs, shared meals, real conversations, the more your serotonin system believes the story you're trying to tell it. I am safe. I am home. I am allowed to rest. And when you can't access those things, when life throws chaos your way, when nothing seems to help, that's where community comes in. Other people's serotonin systems can co-regulate yours, a calm voice, a gentle touch, a friend who listens instead of fixing. These aren't just emotionally helpful, they're chemically stabilizing. Our nervous systems evolved together, not alone. Even now, as you listen to this, you're engaging in that co-regulation. Your breath is slowing, your body, perhaps, softening, and your serotonin system is listening, adjusting, whispering, maybe I don't need to brace tonight. You don't have to fix your past. You don't have to rewrite your DNA. You just have to keep showing up to the present over and over until your chemistry catches up. Serotonin will follow. It always has. Let's talk about rituals, the small, gentle ones. Not the kind with incense or altars, unless that's your thing, but the everyday acts that quietly tell your brain, you are safe here, because serotonin doesn't respond to drama. It responds to predictability, to pattern, to repetition that says, again and again, this moment is known, and you're allowed to relax inside it. And some of the most powerful rituals we have, they involve light, food, and touch. Let's begin with light. When morning sunlight enters your eyes, it passes through the retina and travels deep into your brain. There, it stimulates serotonin production in a cluster of neurons in the dorsal raphe nucleus. This little cluster is ancient. It doesn't care about your inbox, your deadlines, your unresolved texts. It only wants to know, is it day or is it night? And if it's day, serotonin rises. That signal tells your whole system, wake up, regulate, begin the rhythm of the day. Now here's the catch. Your brain needs natural light. Screens don't cut it. Indoor lighting doesn't cut it. You need at least a few minutes of real, ambient daylight to send the message clearly. That's why even a 5-minute morning walk can help stabilize mood. It's not exercise, it's calibration. You are syncing with the sun. Now let's talk about food. You've heard of tryptophan, the amino acid that becomes serotonin. But it doesn't work alone. It needs cofactors, B vitamins, iron, magnesium, zinc. These are the behind-the-scenes players that help your enzymes do their job. So eating isn't just fuel, it's instruction. A warm, balanced meal tells your gut, we're okay. And in response, enterochromaffin cells in your intestines produce serotonin not to make you happy, but to help digest, to move things along, to keep the inner environment flowing smoothly. And even though that serotonin doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, the message does, through the vagus nerve, through immune signaling, through the chemistry of satiety and ease. This is why meals eaten slowly, intentionally, with others if possible, can have mood-enhancing effects. You're not just feeding your stomach, you're feeding your regulation system. Then there's touch. Physical contact releases oxytocin, sure, but it also enhances serotonin release, especially when the touch is gentle, rhythmic, safe. A hand on your back, a warm blanket, a cat sleeping on your chest. These aren't luxuries, they're biological inputs. Your skin is full of receptors that talk directly to your nervous system, and serotonin listens to those whispers. It says, this is good, let's soften. Even self-touch counts. When you place a hand on your own heart, when you rub lotion into your shoulders, when you simply rest your fingertips against your cheek, the body doesn't always distinguish between who's doing the comforting. It just knows the sensation. These three things, light, food, and touch, form a kind of serotonin triangle. They create the foundation for emotional tone. Not highs, not euphoria, just readiness. Just the background conditions for okayness. But let's add one more point: stillness. Meditation isn't about emptying the mind. It's about letting the body notice itself. When you slow your breath, close your eyes, and return attention to sensation, serotonin pathways are gently activated, especially those connected to interoception, the awareness of your internal state. When you sit still and notice your heartbeat, your breath, your hunger, your fatigue, you're not doing nothing. You're creating a feedback loop, and serotonin strengthens that loop over time. This is why people who meditate regularly often report improved emotional regulation, not because they never feel bad, but because they recover more quickly. They don't stick in emotional states as long. Their serotonin system knows how to return them to baseline. And you don't need hours. Even 2 minutes of focused stillness can be enough. So imagine this: a morning ritual. You step outside, just for a moment. You feel the light. You breathe. Later, you sit down with a warm bowl of something nothing fancy. You chew slowly, no rush. At some point you touch your own chest and exhale. You say to yourself, "This is me now." In those moments, serotonin flows. Not in a rush, not like magic, but like a quiet stream regaining its path. You don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to create moments that tell your biology, "This is safe, this is home." And over time, those moments become memory, then habit, then baseline. Then you wake up one morning and realize you feel okay. You didn't chase joy. You didn't hack your brain. You just gave it what it needed. And serotonin did what it always does. It listened. Stress makes you sharp until it makes you shatter. It's a survival mechanism, finely tuned through millennia. The sound of a twig snapping in the dark, a flicker of movement in the corner of your eye, the sudden quiet of a room. Your body reacts before your mind even catches up. And serotonin? Serotonin decides whether to stay sharp or let go. You see, stress and serotonin have a complicated relationship. When a threat appears, your brain's stress systems activate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA for short. Cortisol floods your bloodstream, your heart races, digestion pauses, the body prepares for fight or flight. In the short term, this response is adaptive. It keeps you alive. But in chronic stress, serotonin becomes collateral damage. Prolonged exposure to cortisol can reduce serotonin synthesis, release, and receptor sensitivity. Over time, the system frays. Emotions become harder to regulate. Sleep suffers. Concentration drops. The thermostat breaks. You might not even realize it's happening. You just start feeling off, more irritable, more withdrawn. Small things feel overwhelming. Large things feel impossible. This is burnout, and serotonin is often at the center of it. But let's go deeper, because serotonin doesn't just suffer in stress. Sometimes it responds to it. In acute danger, serotonin's role flips. It can become part of the alarm system. In certain brain areas, serotonin amplifies anxiety rather than calming it. It sharpens perception, heightens vigilance. Make sure you don't miss a clue. It's trying to help. It's trying to keep you safe. But if the threat never ends, if the emails keep coming, if the relationship stays brittle, if the fear is internal, then serotonin keeps the alarm bells ringing far past the point of usefulness. This is where trauma lives. Not just as a memory, but as a chemical loop. Your body continues preparing for a danger that already passed, or one that never came. Your serotonin system becomes locked in a high alert state. Even peace starts to feel suspicious. And yet, this same system is capable of recovery. Because serotonin doesn't operate in isolation. It's shaped by inflammation, immune signaling, and the gut-brain axis. And all of these systems respond to care. Did you know that chronic inflammation, often caused by poor sleep, processed diets, or unresolved psychological stress, can interfere with serotonin production? Tryptophan, the amino acid that usually becomes serotonin, is instead shunted into an alternate pathway called the kynurenine pathway, which creates neurotoxic metabolites that further disrupt mood and cognition. So yes, what you eat, how you sleep, how you feel about yourself, these aren't just lifestyle factors. They're part of your serotonin ecosystem. But the inverse is also true. Reducing inflammation through rest, movement, connection, or even laughter helps serotonin flow more freely. Even something as simple as a sincere compliment or a belly laugh can momentarily lower stress hormones and nudge serotonin upward, not in a dramatic spike but in a rebalancing. Serotonin doesn't need fireworks. It needs signals. This moment is not dangerous. This place is safe. You're allowed to soften now. Which brings us to a surprising truth. Serotonin loves stillness, but it thrives on recovery. That means you can be stressed and still repair. You can be tired and still heal. The goal isn't to eliminate stress. It's to give your body clear endings, to complete the loop. That's what trauma-sensitive therapies often aim to do. Not to erase the memory, but to retrain the chemistry. To help the nervous system realize the danger is no longer present. That it's okay to stop running. Even small rituals help. A bath after a hard day. A deep exhale after an argument. A friend who says, "You did your best." These aren't just kindnesses. They're biological markers. They tell serotonin, "We're back now. You can turn down the volume." And here's the part you may need to hear most. Even when you're overwhelmed, even when your system is flooded, even when serotonin feels out of reach, your body is still trying to protect you. It's not sabotaging you. It's remembering something. Maybe something old. Maybe something unresolved. Maybe something that once kept you alive. But now, you're not there anymore. And serotonin, if given the chance, will remember how to come home. So tonight, as your breath slows and your muscles sink into the mattress, your stress hormones will begin to fade. Your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest side, will begin to rise. And serotonin will follow. Quietly, steadily, faithfully. Because healing is not a single act. It's 1,000 moments of re-entry. And this silence, right now, is one of them. In a world that moves faster than thought, altering your chemistry has never been easier. A capsule, a patch, a tablet that promises stability. For some, these tools are lifelines, tethers to a life that once felt impossible to access. For others, they're questions wrapped in side effects, identity shifts, and philosophical doubt. So what does it mean to chemically change your mind? Let's begin with the most common antidepressants. SSRIs, SNRIs, atypical combinations, they're everywhere. Millions of people rely on them, and they work. Not for everyone, not all the time, but often enough to have reshaped the landscape of modern psychiatry. And they don't add serotonin, remember? They let it linger longer in the synapse. They change how often the message is heard. But what do you do when the message is unclear? When medication helps, but not enough? Or when it dulls as much as it softens? This is where modern pharmacology meets the fog of mystery. You see, we still don't entirely understand why antidepressants work the way they do. The serotonin theory of depression, the idea that low levels directly cause low mood, is overly simplistic. What seems more accurate is that depression is a network malfunction, and serotonin modulation is just one of many circuit breakers. That brings us to the newer frontiers, psychedelics. Substances like psilocybin, LSD, and DMT act primarily on serotonin, 2-ampere receptors, particularly in the cortex, where perception, identity, and self-awareness swirl together. These aren't everyday medications. They don't build gradually. They flood the system, dissolve boundaries, blur self from other. People describe mystical experiences, ego death, sudden emotional clarity. It's not serotonin increasing, it's serotonin being hijacked. The brain, flooded with signaling, temporarily suspends its usual patterns. Neural networks that once fired predictably begin to crosswire. The default mode network, often overactive in depression and rumination, goes quiet. And what rushes in? Connection, memory, grief, awe, terrifying insight, beautiful disassembly. It's not a trip, it's a rewiring opportunity. Of course, this is why psychedelic therapy is carefully structured in clinical trials. Setting, intention, integration. The experience alone is not the cure. It's the processing afterward that counts. You open the door, but serotonin doesn't walk through it alone. You need meaning too. This raised deep questions. Where does identity live if a chemical can shift it? What part of you is your mood? If a molecule can make you feel worthy, was the unworthiness ever real? These aren't just theoretical questions. They matter when someone wonders, If I stop taking this, will I still be me? And the answer is not simple, because serotonin doesn't give you identity. It gives you the ability to stabilize identity, to access joy long enough to believe it's real, to hold pain without being shattered by it. Whether that access comes from therapy, meditation, love, nature, or medication, it's still you doing the work. The chemistry is scaffolding. You're the builder. Still, the stigma remains. Some say taking antidepressants is unnatural. But is inflammation natural? Is prolonged insomnia natural? Is chronic disconnection natural? Or are these signs of systems thrown out of rhythm, and serotonin one part of the orchestra trying to retune? No, the body was not designed to be in constant crisis, and helping it recover isn't cheating. It's remembering. That's what serotonin helps you do, even if you use outside tools to get there, even if you need time, trial, error, and support, even if the route is winding, because the question isn't, is this natural? It's, does this help me feel more like myself again? And if the answer is yes, then the molecule did its job. But chemical intervention is only one layer. The deeper layer is this. Can you stay with yourself when the mood returns? Can you trust that joy is not an accident? Can you believe that healing is not a betrayal of who you've been? That's the real shift. And serotonin, whether it's whispered into being by your own cells or nudged forward by a tiny white pill, is trying to help you stay in that space. The space of enough. So tonight, as your body processes all the substances of the day, food, breath, emotion, even medicine, your brain continues its gentle recalibration, not to erase who you are, but to help you find the tone that lets you live inside your life again. You don't have to choose between chemistry and meaning. You are made of both. There's a quiet revolution in your mind that begins the moment you choose not to react, not out of suppression, but out of awareness. When you breathe instead of snap, when you soften instead of brace, when you say, I don't know, instead of pretending certainty, something subtle begins to shift. A circuit, a loop, a tone. And serotonin, ever the background composer, listens. Because here's the truth. You don't have to boost serotonin. You can simply listen to it again. We live in a culture obsessed with hacking the brain, fixing it, optimizing it, upgrading it like a gadget. But serotonin doesn't want to be hacked. It wants to be heard. It wants rhythm, stillness, honesty, repetition, and most of all, it wants space. That's why practices like mindfulness, breathwork, and meditation don't work like pills. They work like instruments. You must keep playing, and the more often you play, the more clearly serotonin hums in tune. Let's take a breath, a slow one, not to sedate, but to return. Because breathing isn't just about oxygen, it's about state change. When you exhale slowly, the vagus nerve is activated. Heart rate slows, muscles relax, the nervous system softens. Serotonin pathways begin to engage. And now, from this state, you can choose not just behavior, but attention. You might ask, where is my mind pulling me? Is this thought useful? Am I reacting from habit or responding from clarity? This ability to pause and observe, to reframe, is at the heart of emotional regulation, and it's where serotonin quietly shines. Think of it as a delay line, a space between stimulus and response, a moment to adjust the emotional tone before the full wave hits. Without it, life feels like a series of collisions. With it, life becomes a series of decisions. And you don't need perfect stillness to find this. You just need practice. Even 5 seconds of awareness in a moment of stress can change the neural trajectory of your next hour. You can sit on a crowded train and feel your shoulders drop. You can hear criticism and still stay inside your body. You can feel anxious and still stay. That's serotonin's superpower, not happiness. Resilience. Let's talk about therapy, another way we listen to serotonin. In many forms of therapy, especially cognitive behavioral and somatic-based work, the goal isn't to add joy. It's to increase emotional range, to make your nervous system more flexible, not permanently cheerful, because a well-regulated serotonin system doesn't block hard feelings, it hosts them. It lets you cry and recover, rage and reflect, grieve and sleep. That's the deep shift. And that's what practices like journaling, breath awareness, grounding techniques, and even trauma-informed movement are really doing. They're training the nervous system to allow experience without drowning in it. Over time, with patience, serotonin learns a new script. This fear is old. This sadness will pass. This thought isn't a threat. And gradually, your system begins to believe you. The storm comes, and you stay upright. Not because you're numb, but because you've learned to float. Let's make it even simpler. You wake up, and the light hits your face. You stretch, even if you don't feel like it. You drink water. You eat something that didn't come from a crinkly bag. You pause for 30 seconds and notice your breath. You listen to music that brings something soft to the surface. You touch someone you love or yourself gently, without judgment. You walk, even just to the mailbox. Each one of these is not a trick. It's a message to serotonin, to the nervous system, to your body. We are still here. We are not giving up. We are choosing presence today, and presence, over time, becomes the environment in which serotonin thrives. So no, healing doesn't always look like joy. Sometimes it looks like not spiraling. Sometimes it looks like one good hour after a bad morning. Sometimes it looks like recognizing a thought as untrue and letting it pass instead of pulling it close. That's serotonin in motion. You don't have to measure it. You just have to trust that every time you return to awareness, you're reinforcing the path. You're lengthening the delay line. You're helping your own chemistry remember how to flow again. And tonight, as sleep settles in, your serotonin system is still practicing, still fine-tuning, still softening the old pathways, opening new ones, still working so you can rest. You are not here by accident. Every breath you take tonight is backed by 1 billion decisions your body made without asking permission, from molecules shifting across synapses to entire chemical tides rising and falling without a sound. And serotonin? It's still with you, still regulating, still protecting, still believing that your next moment matters. But here's something most people never tell you. Serotonin isn't about happiness. It's about confidence. Not the puffed chest, loud laugh kind. The quiet, cellular kind. The kind that says, I am safe enough to be here. I can stay. I don't need to run from this moment. It helps you belong to your body, your life, your relationships, your past, your possibilities. That belonging is fragile when serotonin falters. The world feels untrustworthy. The self feels unanchored. You question your instincts. You avoid closeness or crave it so much it hurts. You struggle to know what's real inside your own mind. And yet serotonin never gives up. It keeps adjusting, keeps interpreting, keeps offering you a frame to see through, even when everything inside feels off-kilter. It doesn't care if you're perfect. It just wants to help you return. Return to your own emotional landscape, not as an outsider, but as a resident. Return to the subtle rhythms of being alive, not as a spectator, but as someone whose story is still being written. Serotonin's not in charge, but it is the glue that holds your emotional scaffolding together. It connects gut to brain, memory to feeling, past to present. It softens trauma's grip and invites the possibility of joy, not through elation, but through stability. And as you lie here now, in this stillness, that stability is already being woven. Your pineal gland is converting serotonin into melatonin, beginning the transformation that will carry you into sleep. The rhythm is ancient. You don't need to understand it. You just need to allow it. You've made it through 1,000 storms, 1,000 little losses and silent victories. And even when you didn't notice, serotonin was part of the journey. It was in your first heartbreak, helping you cry without breaking. It was in that long walk when you didn't know what to say, but your feet just kept moving. It was there when a friend said, "You're not a burden," and something in your chest unclenched for the first time in weeks. It doesn't need applause. It just needs the chance to flow, and flow it will. Because tonight, everything you've heard, every breath, every gentle truth, every scientific whisper has been preparing you not for sleep, but for return. Return to the self that trusts slow healing, to the body that carries you with such quiet dignity, to the mind that no longer fears its own feelings, to the steady current beneath all storms. So rest now. Let the stories go. Let the chemistry take over. Serotonin is still here, and it knows the way. Let it carry you. Let it keep you. Let it remind you that you've always been home. Serotonin is not the chemical of joy, it's the tone setter of emotional life, the quiet architect behind feelings of safety, presence, and emotional regulation. This series has followed serotonin from the gut to the brain, through trauma and healing, through rituals of food, light, and stillness. It's shown how this molecule modulates rather than dictates emotion like a soundtrack more than a headline. You've journeyed through the molecular dance of serotonin's birth, its work in the synapse, and its delicate role in memory, social connection, sleep, and stress. You've seen how early life, genes, trauma, and daily rituals all shape its rhythm. We've explored SSRIs, psychedelics, breathwork, and belonging not to fix, but to return to a steady, livable emotional tone. And tonight, as you rest, serotonin is still gently recalibrating your emotional landscape, transforming into melatonin, weaving the dream space behind your eyes. You don't need to force it. You just need to let go. End of script. Good night.